Okay, hi everyone. So I'm Smithy Q, and we're back now with the next installment of our opening principles and opening trap series. And we're going to discuss today perhaps the granddaddy of them all here, the full 100% accepted fried liver position. And honestly, it's this position that inspired this entire series because it almost seems unfair when I'm looking at this that, hold on, okay, so white is the one who's playing an early knight g5. White is moving a piece twice. White is not developing. He's not worrying about his king safety. He's starting an attack. Black plays obviously the best move, and then he's going to recapture. He has the center. Everything is good, and white can get away with knight takes f7? How is that possible? How can we explain this through the realms of the opening principles? And I'm going to start by not looking at knight takes f7. Because I think this is going to help illustrate why this move works. And ultimately, it's going to come down to what I was talking about in so many of these videos, the tactical weaknesses. Up until now, we've been mostly looking at the white side. But of course, black has tactical weaknesses too, and the most important, the most fundamental is always f7. If bad things happen on f7, then, well, that's often the game. And let's look at this line, queen f3. Not the main line, but surprisingly tricky. It's really, really simple. We're attacking f7. What's the normal move? You'd want to do something like knight f6. Nope, you still lose on f7 with the either the bishop or the knight. Okay, so that doesn't work. If you do something like you bring the queen out, well, you're going to lose the knight there, so that's not very good. If you try and block with f6, same thing. You can't take, well, because that's going to be checkmate. Once that d5 pawn, sorry, backing up. Black plays d5 to block this bishop. As long as there's a pawn there, it takes a while for that bishop to hit f7. But once black takes it with the knight, now there's this x-ray. And we can see that there's a lot of potential threats here on f7. In fact, apparently, the computer says that this, taking the knight, and then playing knight d4 is the best move for black, where we're going to reach this position. It's not checkmate. c2 is being threatened. Really wild, crazy position. Black's a little bit better here. This is why queen f3, immediately attacking f7 doesn't work. But we can see that it poses black some problems. Now what if okay, let's delay it for a second. Let's start with d4. And then we can imagine, takes castle. Oh, what do we want? We want to put that rook on the e-file, check the king. Okay. So black is going to play bishop e7. He's attacking the knight. And now, hopefully, knight takes f7. I just gave it away with the arrow. Isn't that far-fetched of a move? Why? We're castled, black has it. Center is completely open. And in fact, the calculation isn't that hard. We take on f7, and then we come up with the queen f3. Look at that. Check to the king, also hitting the knight, knight's pinned. What's he going to do? If he tries and run with the king, well, guess what? You've got check. What are you going to do? Go here? Well, you know what? That's actually checkmate. There's a couple of other lines, but very, very obvious. Not that hard. And so we can see the power f7 here by castling in d4. And so if we calculate those lines, we saw the queen f3, very interesting. We saw the d4, we see this castle. Allows a really powerful f7 sacrifice. Why don't we just start with that? Doesn't take, a heck of a lot of reasoning to think, why don't we just try it first? Does it work? King takes, queen, let's see if I can do it. There we go, queen f3. And again, the problem for black, you can't just retreat. Something like this. Nope, we're threatening queen f7. We're not up a piece, sorry, we're up a pawn. We can castle, you can't. You're going to get absolutely crushed. This is not a good day for black. And so black is forced to come up here. King on e6. And unlike many of the other traps that I've shared in this series, most of them tend to be 100%, right? You fall into the trap, you lose. We saw that with the I don't remember what they're called, but basically every other trap. This one is not like that. Rather, again, if I were to show those stats, which we keep coming back to, yeah, they're in favor of white. White is winning more games than not, but it's not one of those 90% or 100% victory rates like we saw before. This isn't so much a trap as it is a long-term piece sacrifice. It's 100% sound. White gets an advantage with correct play, but I don't think white fully wins. It's hard to say, to be perfectly honest. It's so concrete. I did some analysis, and it looks like, well, we're going to reach a really messy game. Let's see what happens. Well, first off, let's see. White's going to develop knight c3, developing a piece, attacking d5. Black needs to find a way to defend this knight, because otherwise we're just going to take it. He plays knight b4 to reinforce it. Let's just castle. He now plays c6, reinforces the knight, and now the whole idea is we've got to get to that king, so we want to play d4. Because if black were to take, right, we've got that open e-file, we're going to crush him, just very similar to the previous variations that we looked at. Similar enough. And so black doesn't want to take. And so here, again, let me show you these stats. If you look at them, it's white doing better, but not yet completely winning. But here's the thing. Black is walking on a knife's edge. So if he plays the correct move, he's okay. If he plays the most played move here, which is knight goes to c2, and then after we take, and then he takes the rook, all of a sudden, as you can see, he is completely lost. Rook d1, there's a huge disaster coming on d5. White's going to exchange, invade, game over. Black's king is toast. Okay. Back up. Let's say black plays the correct move. This is queen f6. Well, offering the exchange of queens. We don't want to do that, so we're going to bring the queen back, staring at the king. If you look at the most played move, bishop does d6. All of a sudden, after a3, kicking the knight away, and look at that, we can see again how the stats are going way ahead in white's favor. So what I'm trying to show with this is that if black plays right, he doesn't lose. But it's very easy for black to play incorrectly. Why? Well, because his king is in the center, and the king is the most important thing. Our king's safety, right? You could have all the development, you could have 18 queens, it doesn't matter if you're about to get checkmated. And in many of these positions, that's essentially what happens. Black's either going to get checkmated, or he's going to have to lose a lot of material to stop the checkmate from coming. But that said, if we were to back up, and we were to just follow, again, what the computer calls the best move, king goes to e7, knight e4, and then we get something like c3 here, I turn on the computer, it says, white's better, but it's nothing decisive. You look at this position, it's not easy. There's only a couple of games even in the database at this point. It's still a game. Black still has to worry about his king. It's still probably easier for black to make mistakes, but, it's not completely over. Now, I think there's a very legitimate question where we can say, all right, Smithy, that's wonderful. So we can see here that in a position like this, knight takes d5. The problem is the tactical weakness on f7. Right? If black didn't have that, he'd be great. But he does, and white is really able to pile through on that. So the follow-up question I'm sure you're asking is, Smithy, how do I use the opening principles to not fall into knight takes d5 here? How do we do that? So perhaps we could even back up further. In this position, I've shared several different ideas of how black could approach this, which range from the tricky knight e4, or going full-on development with the Traxler. We've looked at, after this, both b5 and knight goes to d4, which is the Fritz and the Uvestad variation. Really introducing, trying to counter on the tactical weaknesses in white's position and leading to some really messy games. And then the main line would be knight goes to a5, chasing away this bishop, because if the bishop were just to move somewhere, right, now we can take on d5 and not worry about f7. The main line has always been this check, a little bit annoying, and then black is going to sacrifice a pawn. Let's just move the bishop somewhere, wherever. And we can see here that black You know, he's got easy development for all his pieces. He can castle really, really easy. He's got more control of the center. All that's wonderful. He is down a pawn. And it's practice has shown that white, even though he's not fully developed, he doesn't have any weaknesses yet. And these positions are really complex to play. And unfortunately, these are positions that you cannot simply rely on the opening principles to guide you so much. Or that is, simply developing often won't be enough because, well, you are down a pawn. Another option is this bishop goes to d7, which is actually, I'm surprised it's not the main move. We can imagine simply, exchanging, and then, well, white has literally one piece out. Black has three pieces ready to castle queenside. Sure, he's down a pawn, but that pawn's probably going to fall. And if I were to show you the stats, black does well. But I think even more fundamentally, let's back all the way up. It's going to be this position right here, where if you play knight f6, you have to accept the fact that knight g5 is coming, f7 is your tactical weakness, and by playing knight f6, you're allowing all of this to happen. Whereas you could play, for example, bishop c5. You could also play bishop e7 first. By playing bishop c5, you're developing a piece. You're stopping knight g5. Whoops, that's not very good. You're prepared to play knight f6 and then castle. And so it almost feels like a cop-out to say this, but if you don't want to have to find all these tactics and to navigate everything that happens with these dangers on f7, then it actually starts all the way back here on move 3 on deciding, look, white is, if I could draw the arrow, aha, I can draw arrows. White is getting ready to just go nuclear on f7. And you need to respect that. And so if you just play a move willy-nilly, don't be surprised if now there are going to be tactics coming in on f7. And if you want to avoid that, we're going to do something, like this or like this, where you're still developing, but you're negating those f7 ideas. I hope this helps reveal at least how I understand the fried liver, why it works. It all comes down to f7, right? Sure, black is playing knight f6 and black is fighting for the center, but even with this knight takes d5, technically black's moving a piece twice as well, and he's opening the position when white can castle really quickly and f7 is in danger. Fundamentally, that's why knight takes d5 is suspicious. So I tried my hardest to try to understand this position and then explain it. Hopefully I did a good job. Let me know. I'm again not just trying to show you the traps so you can play them, but it's that way you can understand them and then apply them across different positions. I think I have a couple of more videos on this series to go, but again, I'm always open to feedback, so let me know. Otherwise, I'm Smithy Q. Thanks for watching, everyone. Thanks for listening. Bye for now.